Dear participants of this distinguished conference, ladies and gentlemen, the world of science is international, not national, by its nature, this being particularly true for exact and natural sciences, for principal truths of science. Nevertheless, the priorities attached to science in a great power and the attendant scope and remit are very different to those for a small country, especially since the early 20th century. Fundamental and applied sciences in the 20th centuries have advanced mainly in great powers due to their economic military needs as well as their financial abilities. In small countries, more attention has been paid to regional or national issues, to the study of local natural resources, and to humanities and social sciences. Such an approach requires less funding as well as highlighting national identity. Many of the most capable scientists often move from small countries of origin to great powers, for example, United States, in search of broader fields of activity. And thus, a steady intellectual emigration takes place. The great discoveries winning Nobel Prizes mainly take place in large countries. Nobel Prize winners from small countries have made their achievements outside their native countries. Example, Poland, Hungary, Slovenia, Croatia, Romania. Professor Arturi Virtanen from Finland and my tutor in polarography, Jaroslav Hejrovský from Czechoslovakia, are some of the few exceptions. Of course, this assertion is simplified and only partly true. Many small countries are traditionally great powers in science, as Switzerland, Sweden, Denmark, Belgium, Netherlands, Israel, partly Austria, Finland, Norway. Furthermore, during 21st century, a new trend should be signaled. Small European countries have the opportunity to demonstrate their capabilities in science within the common European science framework. However, science does not only comprise discovering of new laws of nature and society. In addition to study of fundamental issues, new knowledge needs to be transferred to medicine, technology, scientific expertise. We used to denote as scientists those practically oriented, qualified individuals who guarantee the functioning of a civilized state by relying on mainly foreign experience and adapting it. In addition to basic science, every country needs to maintain innovative science activities related to inventions, which lead to the development of new materials, devices, and programs. If innovative sciences have received state support from society, they may transform home-made inventions into competitive products, resulting in great profits for the little country. One can mention historic examples such as Nokia in Finland or VEF Minox mini photo camera developed in pre-war Latvia. Studies of the society and the nation are the subject of the humanities and social science, whereby human and national values are identified and investigated. These disciplines have been closely connected with culture, especially the national culture, a feature especially important for small nations. All these aspects of science educate society, help maintain a common level of culture, describe the intellectual temperature, and help to advance higher education. Last but not least, science is sustaining critical thinking, guarantees democracy, the maturity, free thinking, ethics of the society. It is an axiom that each civilized country has to support his own science, which may be limited in extent, but multi-faced and responding to international quality standards. For small countries, support for science is no less important than for great powers. A small country should regard its best scientists as symbols of national pride, at the same level as its artists, writers, musicians, sportsmen, of course avoiding exaggeration without ascribing overstated exclusivity to them. Reflecting about science in the three Baltic states, in Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania, it is difficult to segregate the periods when science was being developed there as parts of a great power, Tsarist Russia or the USSR, or as small independent countries. The Baltic provinces, later Baltic Soviet republics, have never been organic parts of Russia or the USSR. They have retained some identity, enjoying greater or lesser autonomy. Baltic Germans, the cultural minority, played a leading role in the Baltic provinces of Latvia and Estonia until 1918. The role of Baltic Germans in the formation and functioning of the Dorpat or Tartu University was decisive throughout the 19th century. The university was renowned for the presence of outstanding scientists of international reputation. Simultaneously, it was the first forge, the cradle of learned Estonians and Latvians. This was also true for Riga Polytechnic, today Riga Technical University. It's an old building we see, which was founded in 1862. During the traditional Baltic conferences on history of science, we have brought to light the merits of the Baltic Germans, their scientific heritage. We have tried to treat them as a traditional, honorable, and inalienable part of our history of science. The names of Wilhelm Ostwald, Theodor von Grotius, Karl Ernst von Baer, Christian Pander, Piers Ball, biologists, chemists, mathematicians, and many, many others may be mentioned in this context. The traditions of higher education and science in the Baltics start in Riga until the Russification epoch of Alexander III have been determined by the geopolitical situation between East and West, an orientation towards Germany and German science, science and innovation transfer from the West to the Russian Empire. It affected not only the Baltic region, but also inner Russia and even its periphery in Eurasia, for Siberia, Ukraine, Georgia. The Baltic German monopoly of science and intellectual life in general, and competition between them and the intellectuals of the emerging nations, the Latvian and Estonian nations, can be assessed with a degree of ambivalence. In the Baltic provinces, success could only be gained by individuals closely connected with the Baltic German community. The cases of the pharmacist David Hieronymus Grindel, Paul Walden, etc. And this resulted in the first intellectual emigration of Latvians mainly to universities in inner Russia, St. Petersburg, Moscow, Kharkov, Kiev. From the time of Neo-Latvian movement until the creation of State of Latvia, minded science mainly made their careers in the previously named centers. Science in exile was a distinctive feature of the emerging Latvian scientists. Veterinary scientists Eugen Zemmer, Christoph Hellmans, biochemist Robert Krimbergs, physicist Wilhelm Altberg, linguist Jānis Enzelins and Peter Schmitz, the folklorist Christian Barons, it should be noted, all of them worked in Russia, outside their native land. The University of Latvia, based on the old Riga Polytechnicum, was founded in 1919, and as a result of the Declaration of Latvian Independence in 1918. In addition to engineering, agrarian science and chemistry, humanities and the social sciences, biology, physics, medicine were represented in the new university, but not to exclusion. The majority of scientists of Latvian origin, earlier dispersed throughout inner Russia and Western Europe, were able to find here scope for their field of activities. A new generation of successful scientists grew up in the independent Latvian scientific terminology has been developed and new academic disciplines arose. The Baltic Germans' monopoly in science was broken as in Estonia as in Latvia. However, a certain number of them remained in the new academic community up until repatriation of Baltic Germans in 1939 after Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. A number of attempts to establish links with northern science should be noted. The Conference on Archaeology, 1930, the Baltic Congress on History, 1937, both in Riga. In the event, the University of Latvia developed until 1940 as a national and European university simultaneously, at the same time winning a degree of international recognition in fields of Baltic philology, physical chemistry, hydrology, X-ray analysis, biology and medicine. Latvian scientists successfully discharged their mission to create sound academic science in their small country. An essential comment could be added concerning excessive importance attached to national identity. We consider the case of Paul Walden, and here is his portrait. This is Paul Walden, and now his monument in Riga. He was the founder of dynamic stereochemistry and electrochemistry of non-aqueous solution, member of 7 academies of sciences, honorary member of Finnish Academy of Sciences too. His grandson is a Finnish professor, Erkki Hollo from Helsinki University. Paul Walden was born a Latvian, descended from a peasant family in Vidzeme, Livland. However, he entered the Baltic German community and remained indifferent to Latvian national feelings. Following his tutor Wilhelm Ostwald, who considered himself to be German, Paul Walden pursued research in the field of physical organic chemistry and was several times, I believe 7 times, nominated for a Nobel Prize. He was the most prominent scientist in Riga prior to 1919, repeatedly rector of his alma mater, the Riga Polytechnicum, during the Tsarist regime. It was intended that Walden become the first rector of the University of Latvia, but he did not trust the idea of a national university and instead emigrated to Germany. This was a drama, both for emerging independent Latvia and for Walden personally. National identity came into conflict with an international one. The name of Walden nowadays is recognized in his homeland. He has been awarded post-mortem an honorary doctorate of the University of Latvia, as well as the title of honorary member of Riga Technical University. In 2013, the 150th anniversary of Paul Walden was commemorated internationally, as an event recognized by UNESCO, but especially in his native country. Were Walden to be regarded solely as a representative of Germany, such celebrations possibly might not have taken place at all. In Latvia, however, he is regarded as the most prominent natural scientist, chemist especially, of Latvian origin. Thus, the national aspect in emerging young republics played a very important role, and perhaps it was overemphasized, while in a united Europe, migration of scientists now has become a normal phenomenon. World War II and the occupation of the Baltic states interrupted the pursuit of science in these small countries. Most scientists from Latvia emigrated to the West, where some of them found appropriate positions and adapted to conditions abroad. About 400 professors in the USA, Germany, Sweden, Canada, Australia, Latin America belong to the category which may be called the second international intellectual exile of Latvians. Among these are the physicist Juris Upatnieks, one of the inventors of holography, nominated for a Nobel Prize in physics in 1971, and Konstantin Puch, designer of the AVAX system. Latvia is represented now in the Atlas Permanent de l'Union Européenne, where the three most outstanding scientists of each country are listed. And Latvia is represented by the linguist, one of the founders of Baltic philology, Professor Jānis Enzelins, by the founder of classical physical chemistry, Nobel Prize winner in 1909, Wilhelm Ostwald, born in Riga and holding professorship in Riga Polytechnicum, and by Juris Upatnieks, the named, developed holography whilst living in exile in the US. After World War II, scientific investigations continued in Latvia, even intensified, subordinating to the USSR, in spite of terror and oppression during Stalin regime. The activities of science were based to a great extent on local scientists and tradition. And since the epoch of Khrushchev, integration of the science in Latvia into the unified Soviet science, ironically speaking, proceeded partly with regard to the military-industrial complex of the USSR. This period may be characterized by a reorganization from the pursuit of science in a small country to science in a superpower, connected with reorientation from a European science system to science in totalitarian superpower, including politicization and militarization of science, restrictions on freedom of investigation and liberal views. But we should recognize that in the USSR, this was also the brilliant period of Gagarin, Keldysh, Korolev, Sakharov, and Kapitsa. As well as in Latvia, quantitatively there was progress in science. The number of scientists in Latvia arose from 1,120 in 1930 till 70,033 in 1990. New branches of science appeared, ones which were not present in the pre-war Latvia: solid-state physics, magnetohydrodynamics, mechanics of composite materials, modern organic and bioorganic chemistry, wood chemistry, molecular biology, development of new medical remedies. Latvian scientists contributed to the space research in the USSR, new insulation materials for rockets and for Buran-type reusable spaceships. Rapport and composite materials have been developed. New medical remedies have been synthesized, among them the anti-cancer drug Tegafur, still used in Japan. 25% of all the remedies New medicals invented in the former USSR were synthesized in Riga in Institute of Organic Synthesis. And the prestige of science in Latvia reached a maximum concerning natural and exact science, but no means in the humanities and social science. And now we come to the independent Latvia. After 1991, the restoration of independence has resulted once more in reorganization of local science investigations from being defined as part of superpower to accommodating the priorities of a small country, one that disposes very different means. A Western style in science has been introduced step by step, and the modern-minded generation of experts in the humanities has come into being. Many positive aspects should be noted. Nevertheless, the science founding has diminished dramatically in our independent country by a factor of 10 to 30. Freedom without money. A brain drain set in, first from science to local bureaucracy and the business world, and later to foreign countries. Thus, the period after 1991 may be regarded partly as the third intellectual emigration. Such trends are evident in all post-communist countries, yet in Latvia they are more pronounced and painful than, for example, in Estonia. Presently, Latvia, in terms of research funding and perhaps science effectiveness, ranks among one of the last of new member states of EU, unfortunately. Through participation in the research area of Europe and after the join to EU in 2004, Latvia gives hope for a return from the situation of science in a small state to science in a great power, United Europe. European funding presently act to save science in Latvia, as support from own state is miserly, and after the 2008 economic crisis even further diminished. Evolution of science budgets and prognosis of European Commission show that positive changes before 2020 are not to be expected for Latvia. The same situation obtains for innovation. Nevertheless, several achievements of Latvian scientists still are recognized in physics, biomedicine, production of new medical preparations, computer technologies, innovative elementary products, NMR spectroscopy. In medicine, especially cardiology and cardiosurgery, the reception of modern methods proceeds successfully. A young mathematician, Professor Andris Ambainis, member of the Latvian Academy, is a leading investigator in Europe of theoretical foundations of quantum computing. His group comprises researchers from Cambridge, Brussels, Paris, Amsterdam, Riga. In this year, an expert commission from Nordic Council assessed that the Institute of Organic Synthesis I mentioned is a leading research institution in Latvia, and it has invented and patented various cardio and cytoprotectors, remedies against Alzheimer's disease, etc. Chemistry and biomedicine, as well as material sciences and computer science, enjoy the most respectable science traditions in Latvia. In any case, its own science is an essential value for a small country, with the same importance as demography, welfare, economic growth. Of course, one can reflect on such practical arrangements as when a scientist leaves his country but retains close intellectual ties with it, that he may collaborate with an international framework. Not to emigrate, but to migrate is the principle of our young scientists. Experience gained at foreign countries provides good training. However, several local high-level research centers need to exist in Latvia, to to return to, and the government should support them with a guaranteed funding. The state should regularly spend an appropriate percentage of GDP on R&D. In Latvia, however, this level is only 0.7%, whereas in Finland it is 3.8%, and for EU in average 2.03%. In any small country, a special role is played by the humanities and other national sciences. During the past 20 years, an interdisciplinary complex of scientists, humanities, named Letonistics or Letonica, has been developed in Latvia. The subjects studied are Latvians and Latvia, the national features of Latvians, language, culture, history, values, the sense of the existence of the free Latvian state, features unique to our society. On the one hand, Letonica ought to present Latvia to the international scientific community. On the other hand, it should serve to be a source for raising intellectual cultural patriotism, including national self-criticism by Latvians themselves. A 4 volumes, 2,400 pages collection of academic articles in Latvian, titles Latvia un Latvieši, Latvians and Latvia, was published this year. These publications contains the most essential data about the Latvian ethnos, history, culture, science, higher education. I show the first volume of this voluminous edition, and presently an English version of this publication is under preparation. So, I come to my conclusion. Information about the not very encouraging situation of science, especially in Latvia today, has to be compared with the history of science in Latvia, which has had some impressive, even glorious pages. Systematic investigations of the local history of science in the Baltic have been carried from 1958 onwards. The first Baltic Conference on History of Natural Sciences and Medicine took place in Riga in June 1958, 66 years ago, with participation by colleagues from Estonia, Lithuania, Moscow and Leningrad. The conference took place upon a joint initiative by the Latvian Academy of Sciences and the National Museum of History of Medicine, headed by its founder, Professor Jāņa, my father. I myself, as a young chemist and researcher at the Institute of Organic Synthesis, had the opportunity to participate in organizing the first conference and to deliver there the keynote lecture. And here is a short review in Acta Medico-Historica Regentia, which is entitled Baltic Science Conferences of History of Science during half century from Khrushchev to Ilves, 1958-2008. It is published, and here is a review of the previous conferences. The main topic of our conferences always has been personalities of scientists, scientific contacts between the neighbor countries within the Baltic region, impact of our scientists on the history of a number of disciplines, events and research schools. During the time when we were in the USSR, these conferences were a form of intellectual resistance, self-affirmations. They were subject of a broad interest of local academic community. The 3 Baltic republics, even within the USSR, had been able to retain a large part of their national identity and Western characteristics. In the case of Estonia and Latvia, this was based on a substantial common historical experience. It also was due to the former role played by the Baltic Germans in these countries. Lithuanian history has been more substantially influenced in past by Polish science and culture, in particular with the regard of the old University of Vilnius. Paradoxically, Soviet rule united the three Baltic republics, Sovietskaya Pribaltika or the USSR West, and led to the development of cultural separatism that in the field of science was based both on traditions inherited from the pre-war period and on the greater role played by science in society during the Soviet epoch. The series of conferences dedicated to the topic of the history of science were a form of Baltic intellectual entente, an expression of regional identity under Soviet rule. I should like to emphasize the positive role played by the Lithuanian science historian Paulius Slavenas in organizing these conferences, as well as that of his successor, Professor Juozas Krikštopaitis. From Estonia, tradition was firmly upheld by representatives of Tartu University and later from Tallinn. It was no less significant that just as between 1920 and 1940, so from 1945 to 1990, the notion of the Baltic republics was established and sustained, in particular with respect to science. This appellation comprises Estonia and Latvia and in equal measure Lithuania. The Baltic Association of the History and Philosophy of Science was founded in 1990 upon the initiative from Estonia. Professor Peter Mürsep from Tallinn presently is the most active in the work of this association. Today, I am very pleased that the 26th conference in this series is taking place for the first time in Finland, a country greatly advanced in science. This fact demonstrates that traditions may be kept and developed to a high level, and we also note that Finland is not only the fourth Scandinavian country, it is as well the fourth Baltic country. I send my cordial regards to all participants of this conference and apologize for my absence. This conference coincides with several very important events in Latvia: the solemn opening ceremony of Latvian National Library, an international conference on enlightenment, a commemoration in this context of UNESCO of the 300th anniversary of the birth of Gotthard Friedrich Stender, a Baltic German who brought enlightenment to the serfs, peasants of the Latvia and Kurland by popularizing science. His book Augstas Gudrības grāmata, the Book of Higher Wisdom, 1774, I have here in my disposal its third edition, was the first popular encyclopedia for serfs, peasant serfs in Europe, wherein the main concepts of astronomy, physics, geography, biology were set on. Stender was a Lutheran clergyman, and his mission was enlightenment of a small nation in its native language. Today, 220 years later, in addition to all other duties, an additional mission remains for scientists: enlightenment by emphasizing the role of science and education in the life of a nation, particularly important outcome for small nations. Thus, the mission of a scientist of small nation remains exceptional, and we don't want to lose it. My reflections might seem somewhat primitive and trivial, and they contain, of course, a lot of platitudes. I beg my pardon. Nevertheless, in our situation of economic and political stresses, inner and outer menaces and threats, we need all together to support science and emphasize its role in society, especially in society of small countries. Especially in this time, it is true for Latvia. But we hope that common efforts will bring good results, and we have an optimistic outlook to the future. Thank you for your kind attention.